Okay, so finalising the high poly. We've jumped ahead again. It's kind of like that draw the owl meme, isn't it? It now resembles more the full New Vegas version of the gun, sort of a fantasy, not actually existing gun, rather than the Magnum BFR, which we originally were going more towards as our reference. I may or may not have converted it from single action loading gate style fixed cylinder to swing out cylinder because, well, it's just more similar to the original gun in New Vegas, I suppose. But yeah, so once we're happy with the subdivided mesh, we name it for baking. So if we open our receive high poly layer, you can see that I've named every part with a sort of suffix after it, underscore high. What this does is, in the bake, when we create the low poly version of the mesh, if we do, for example, frame underscore low, it will then reference this high poly version of the mesh to bake onto itself, but also these other frame underscore high meshes that will also bake to frame underscore low, because basically everything after this underscore high suffix doesn't matter. So these top screw, rivet, 1, 2, these are just here to differentiate the meshes, but what they will do is they will all bake to frame underscore low because they start with frame underscore high. It's that simple. I guess you sort of have to bake yourself to really understand how it looks at the meshes, the names. But it's probably simpler than I'm making it sound. Sorry if I sound a bit ill, by the way, because I am. I might sound a bit more nasally than usual, if that's even possible. What we can do at this stage, which is really cheeky, is do an in-game sort of high poly combined mesh, which I did do earlier. All we do is we take the high poly meshes and then we basically apply. So this is the original. Oh yeah, another tip. If you have, say, let me actually do it. Is this combined? Yeah, it is. Damn. So basically, this mesh here was turbo smoothed, obviously, but what I made sure not to do was turn on iteration. I mean isolated display on the mesh, because when it would be attached to the other meshes, it'd shade really, really weird. So what you want to do is, when you specifically want to make, if you do this combined high poly mesh, turn off isolated display on any of the turbo smooth pieces. So that's just a small tip there. All we do is we hit it with the Pro Optimize, calculate, kind of similar to ZBrush decimation in that it reduces the amount of tries. Just takes a sec. And then we pop in a percentage value, say 10%. Just look up here, that's still too high, so I want to go for like round about yeah, that seems about right. Anything under sort of 100,000 tries will load in game. If you kind of go above that, it'll kind of go wrong on export with the NIF. So we make sure we collapse that. Oh, if you want this display up here, you hit 7 to toggle it, and if you go to configure viewports, statistics, and then just use these settings, triangle count on selection, then you can get individual try counts for separate parts, which is pretty useful. So all of these are under 100,000, so these will load in the game. Just select it all and then export it into an if. Yep, oh, that's a bit weird. But yeah, we just copy these as usual, block, copy, and paste. Here's the one I made earlier into the new NIF, as I showed you earlier in the tutorial. And then you can test it in game, and it'll shade quite well, largely due to the Pro Optimize modifier. Surprisingly well, actually, compared to our blockout. And I'll show some quick footage of that in game. Okay, here we are in game with the high poly blockout. And yeah, it's not really lagging the game much. I can't really tell because I've got a powerful PC. But yeah, this is a good idea to do this, because then you can sort of tell if you've accidentally made any changes, turning the blockout into the high poly, if there's, you know, anything you might have changed which doesn't fit the game anymore, the character's hands, or if it's a little bit too big. I can't really tell with this gun. Is it too big? I think it's supposed to be big. I seem to only model big guns. I think it's a condition I have. But yeah, we have the swing out cylinder reload, which is similar to what the finished article will be with the custom animations. So yeah, just good to do this. Get a feel for the weapon in game and the scale. Also thought I would quickly show the bools, how I did the frame. So this is all one Boolean, and if I show the operands, you can kind of see how each shape interacts with the Boolean to create the final shape. What I could do is remove them all. Oh wow, where did they go? It's because I didn't have this layer as the active layer. Extract. Okay, so if I get this right. Okay, so first we'll do subtract. Go to results. So that removes the hole for the cylinder. Then I think we'll do union and add the hemisphere on the back. Then we'll subtract side parts for the grip and the frame hole. Then we can do, say, the front angle, the top of the scope, the gap that the iron sight's going to. Ah, yeah, okay, so if this is a sub Boolean. What I've done is I've actually added it too late, so what we're going to do is we're going to reorder this. So currently this is operation 7, so it's the 7th operation to take place on this Boolean. What we can do is we can type in a number here and make it the first. So all these other Booleans happened after this one. So it no longer cuts a hole in the hemisphere because the hemisphere was added after the sub that we just did. So go to union, add this, shape. Then we can subtract the hammer hole. And then, so for the front, we want a union here. And subtract. And again. Let's see, okay, I've done this wrong again. We're going to union front frame. I'll fix that after, it's just some simple reordering again. And then we're going to subtract these two, so we'll start with this one. And then this one. Okay, so that was barrel sub base. Thankfully I've named them this time. So you want this to happen after the others. Try 14. Just take care of these holes on the top. And then the hole for the cylinder teeth thing on the back to slide in and out of. The firing pin where it comes in. Haven't detailed this area too much yet. It's not really that important because you're really rarely going to see this kind of area in game, but I'll probably detail it later, either in the texturing phase or the normal map. Trigger hole, and we're done. So you just export this to ZBrush and yeah, polish it, and you get the result that you see here. Nice and smooth. That's the important part, is the sides. So you definitely want enough sides on these smoother surfaces so that when it polishes out, as I've said before, you get you avoid faceting. And to really illustrate the power of Booleans, this is the loading gate style version that I did before. Fully functional. I just the Booleans just work a little differently, and it only took a few hours to go from this to the final result here of the swing out cylinder version. So yeah, Booleans super powerful, pretty easy if you know what you're doing. Just bear in mind the sides. One other thing is just a simple organizational thing. So what you probably want to do is put these separate meshes into their own separate folders based on what mod they're going to be. So you have your scopes, grips, barrels, and under barrels you have, say, barrel standard, barrel fluted, barrel octagon, the sequoia, that kind of thing. Under grips, grip standard, grip comfort. Say if you're doing in Fallout 4, it's comfort grips are usually wooden, and we'll just take this grip mesh and just put it in here. So when you do want to organize your mods and easily switch them out, export them, bake them, all that jazz, you can just toggle which mods you want on and off. Just super simple logistics kind of thing, but yeah, that's just how I do it. And might as well create the low poly folder while we're at it. When I say low, I say LO, not LOW, it's just quicker to type. We'll do Siva low poly, even though I typed LOW there for some reason. So the reason why these layers aren't in all caps is just because they immediately have meshes inside them. Caps layers are layers that hold other layers. They're like master layers to me. And then we just create, oh yep, so you can't have layers with the same name. So you can't have grips and grips, you have to change the name obviously. And then just like you'd have these layers here, you'd also have under combined the exact same thing if you're exporting separate combined meshes, which you would do later if you weren't doing the official 3ds Max 2013 workflow. If you're just using NIF scope splicing, then once you created your low poly, but I'll cover that later, I won't go into it now. And yeah, we're done. Layer management.